I was reborn back to the day when Yishu and I were kidnapped together. In my previous life, I let down my hair in public, revealing my identity as a woman and confessing my feelings for him. In return, I saw the admiration in his eyes and became his first choice, but countless times after that, he would come home drunk, tormenting me by grabbing my neck. If it weren't for you, how could Aishu have died so tragically? Lu Yunju, if only it had been you who died that day. He imprisoned me in a dilapidated courtyard and found a woman who bore an 80% resemblance to Yishu to lavish with affection. This time, the kidnappers once again forced him to choose between the two. I spoke first. Choose Yishu, I don't want you to save me. The wind at the cliff's edge was especially biting, whipping sand and gravel against my face with a stinging pain. The moment my consciousness returned, I found myself with my hands tied behind my back. Standing at the edge of a cliff, the coarse rope dug deeply into the old wounds on my wrists, that was from taking an arrow for Su Yang 3 months ago. Your Highness, have you decided who to save? The bandit leader pressed his blade against my and Yishu's necks, drawing a line of blood. I gritted my teeth and endured the pain, but Yishu let out a sob, tears rolling down her cheeks, looking exceptionally fragile and helpless. Standing opposite, Su Yang pressed his lips tightly together, his gaze shifting uneasily between me and Yishu. In my past life, it was right here, watching his obvious hesitation. A surge of long-held grievances and jealousy drove me to pull out the wooden hairpin holding my hair, as my dark tresses cascaded in the wind. The sudden spark of admiration in his eyes made me believe I had won everything. He saved me and married me. Yet, Yishu's death ultimately planted a thorn in his heart. With every ounce of guilt he felt for Yishu, his resentment toward me grew stronger, so much so that within less than a year of our marriage, he had grown tired of me. Every time he gets drunk, he strangles and torments me. If you hadn't deliberately revealed your true identity as a woman in front of me that day, I would have saved Asher first. If it weren't for you, how could Asher have died so tragically? Lu Yunju, if only it had been you who died that day. I still remember being abandoned by him and locked away in a dilapidated courtyard, starving and fighting with dogs for scraps of food, until I finally froze to death in the endless, bitter cold of winter. I don't want that kind of ending anymore, so I spoke first. Choose Yishu, I don't want you to save me. Su Yang froze. He didn't expect me to be so calm when faced with a life or death choice, not even putting up a fight. Cousin, save me, I'm so scared. Hearing Yishu's plea for help, Su Yang finally stopped hesitating, gritted his teeth and said, "Let Aishu go." He looked at me, as if wanting to say something. In the end, he just held Yishu, who had thrown herself into his arms, even tighter. Then, surrounded by guards, he left step by step. Look, without the sudden disruption of my female identity, his true choice has always been Yishu. I became Su Yang's personal guard when I was 7 years old. We grew up together. I blocked swords for him, sucked out snake venom, and jumped into frozen lakes. As a result, I was left with many scars on my body and a number of lingering health issues. He treated me differently from others, personally applying medicine to my wounds and remembering the preferences I had casually mentioned when it was just the two of us. He would even sit intimately by my side, gazing at the stars together. Those vague, tender feelings quietly grew over the years we spent together, but I always kept in mind my duties and identity, not daring to cross the line even half a step, and his career path would never allow him to fall for a man, so we tacitly suppressed our feelings for each other. Later, Yishu appeared. She is so delicate that a harsh word would bring tears to her eyes, like a dodder flower that requires meticulous care. This is entirely different from me. A guard who has practiced martial arts since childhood, accompanied him through life and death, and is covered in scars. I can sense that Su Yang looks at her with a mix of novelty and pity. Su Yang's attention lingers on Yishu for longer and longer periods, so at that moment in my past life, the accumulated bitterness and resentment, along with the deeply hidden love I longed for him to acknowledge, instantly burned away my reason. I didn't hesitate to reveal my true identity as a woman, just to gamble on my place in his heart. My thoughts returned to the cold reality. The bandit leader sneered, "What a loyal guard. A pity, he gave a forceful push, and a sudden sense of weightlessness washed over him. Su Yang, in this life, I will not gamble anymore. The affection of over a decade spent by your side, along with that absurd and hopeless infatuation, I return them all to you with this body. Consciousness felt as if it were sinking in a bottomless, icy pond, struggling, yet continuously descending. In a daze, it seemed I had returned to the final moment of my previous life, in the dilapidated courtyard. That bone-chilling snow was falling. Su Yang held a woman who looked exactly like Yi Shu, walking indifferently past my broken body without even sparing a glance. Lu Yunju, if only it had been you who died that day. His curse still echoed in my ears. I suddenly opened my eyes, coughing violently, a burning pain searing through my lungs. My vision gradually cleared, revealing a simple bamboo hut. The furnishings were sparse, yet meticulously clean and free of dust. Sunlight streamed through the half-open bamboo window, warming my body. I was actually still alive. You're awake, a voice tinged with a hint of childishness sounded. I followed the voice and saw a child of about 11 or 12 years old walking in, holding a bowl of medicinal brew, a look of pleasant surprise on his face. The young master's calculations were truly accurate. He said you should wake up today. Where is this? My voice came out hoarse and raspy. This is the Cloud Deep Clinic. My master is the physician here. The young servant placed the medicine bowl on a nearby low table. A month ago, my master went to the bottom of the cliff to search for rare medicinal herbs and found you. Seeing that you still had a faint breath, he brought you back. You are truly fortunate, falling from such a great height and getting caught in the thick vines on the cliff face. You managed to survive. I listened in a daze, realizing that I had been unconscious for a month. I was determined to die, to put an end to that absurd debt from my past life. Yet, heaven unexpectedly gave me another chance at life. Thank you for saving my life. A strange, indescribable ache suddenly swelled in my chest. The young servant waved his hand dismissively. My master is kind-hearted and skilled. He would never stand by and watch someone die. Please drink the medicine, it will help you recover. I took the medicine bowl as instructed, the bitter scent rushing into my nostrils, yet it made me feel incredibly real. I was alive, truly and genuinely alive, under the careful treatment of the miraculous Dr. Yu Ichu. My injuries healed quickly. He appeared to be only in his early 20s, with handsome features and a gentle, jade-like demeanor. If not for witnessing his composure and precision in applying acupuncture and medicine, which far exceeded his age, it would be hard to imagine he had already attained such masterful medical skills. After I recovered, I began helping Yu Ichu manage the herb garden and identify medicinal plants. Perhaps due to my martial arts training since childhood, I had an unusually keen sensitivity toward these herbs. In just over a month, I was already able to assist him in treating some simple ailments. Yu Ichu was quite delighted, saying, "You were born for this line of work." I lowered my head, grinding the medicinal herbs in my hand, and smiled faintly. Maybe, in my previous life, I lived for Su Yang, becoming his sharpest blade and his sturdiest shield. In this life, I only want to live for myself once. Yu Ichu did not hold back his knowledge. From identifying herbs to understanding their properties, from meridians and acupoints to pathology and medical principles, he patiently explained everything to me. This 7-leaf lotus is remarkably effective for stopping bleeding and dispersing blood stasis, but you must be careful with the dosage. Excessive use can obstruct the flow of qi and blood. I carefully noted it down and was even able to draw inferences. Then if it's paired with warm-natured sanchi, could it both enhance the therapeutic effect and neutralize its cold, stagnating properties? A glimmer of appreciative smile flashed in Yu Ichu's eyes. Miss Lu has a high level of understanding. The young apprentice Zhu, who was pounding herbs nearby, pouted upon hearing this. Young master used to only teach me. I couldn't help but chuckle, handing him a tray of freshly dried licorice nearby. Zhu, could you help me put this away? You always arrange things the most neatly. Zhu brightened up again and ran off, carrying the medicine tray. Here, there were no schemes, no distinctions of status, no need to constantly be on guard against hidden dangers. This simple and pure life was something I had never experienced while by Su Yang's side. I was almost lost in the tranquility of this paradise-like haven. I thought I could truly leave behind the past and all its old dreams, until that day, when Arju returned from town after purchasing medicinal herbs. Chattering non-stop about everything he had seen and heard along the way, the town is buzzing with excitement. Everyone is talking about the upcoming wedding of the heir to the Marquis of Arnuen in the capital. He said while sorting the herbs, that Lady Yi Shu is truly blessed. The young master dotes on her and grants her every wish, treating her like the most precious treasure. My hand holding the medicine pestle paused almost imperceptibly. Arju didn't notice and continued sharing the gossip she'd heard. They say Miss Yi likes pearls from the South Sea. So the young master had them delivered post-haste from 1,000 miles away. When Miss Yi casually mentioned wanting to see the calligraphy and paintings from the previous dynasty's rare manuscripts, the young master went through great efforts to collect them. Anyway, everyone in the capital knows by now that the heir of Annuan has spoiled his betrothed wife beyond measure. If Miss Yi wants something, even if it's a star from the sky, the young master would probably find a way to pluck it down for her. Oh, is that so? I lowered my eyelashes and continued grinding the medicinal herbs in my hand. It's ironic that after risking life and limb with Su Yang for over a decade, all I got in return was his cold calculation and swift abandonment. He didn't even bother sending anyone to search the bottom of the cliff to confirm whether my bones were truly scattered beyond recognition. Yet his cousin, who only needs to shed a few tears to make his heart ache, receives his undivided affection and devotion. Those subtle, precious feelings I once believed existed between us, the silent understanding and companionship that flowed under the starlight and by the campfire. Looking back now, it feels so much like my own wishful thinking, a self-deceiving joke. Perhaps in Su Yang's heart, I never meant anything at all. My life and death, my affections, were as worthless as weeds. Not even comparable to a casual preference from Yi Shu. I slowly released my tightly clenched hand from the medicine pestle. In this lifetime, he got his wish and married the one he loved, and I, too, gained a new life. From now on, he and I have completely parted ways, never to cross paths again. I carefully poured the ground medicinal powder into the porcelain jar and sealed it tightly. My movements were fluid, and my mind had settled into tranquility. The past was severed, and bygone days were like smoke. Time flowed quietly within the cloud-deep medical cottage. For the sake of convenience, I still dressed as a man, with my dark hair tied high and clad in simple, plain clothing, exuding an even greater sense of ease than in my previous life as a guard. Yu Ichu taught me medical skills with increasing dedication. Arju's initial slight jealousy had long since vanished under my constant gifts of wild trinkets and snacks, and he now affectionately called me Brother Yunju all day long. One afternoon, I was sorting freshly dried herbs in the courtyard. Several luxurious carriages unexpectedly stopped right outside the humble fence gate of the clinic, with attendants hurriedly escorting someone inside. That figure was etched into my very soul. It was Su Yang. In his arms, he held a pale-faced woman who was frowning and moaning. It was Yi Shu. Instinctively, I took half a step back. Hiding in the shadow of the corridor pillar, my heart tightened for a moment before settling into a deathly chill. What a small world. The attendant raised his voice and shouted, "Is Dr. Yu in? Our Su heir is here in person. Hurry up and come out to greet him." Su Yang, his face full of anxiety, said, "Do not be rude. Dr. Yu, my wife suddenly fell seriously ill, and even the imperial physicians in the capital are at a loss. I have come specifically to seek your help." Yu Ichu heard the commotion and walked out from the inner room, his expression calm and detached. "Bring her in," he said. Su Yang quickly carried Yi Shu into the consultation room. As he passed through the courtyard, his gaze inadvertently swept over me, standing in the shadows. Then it abruptly froze. His footsteps halted, his pupils suddenly contracted, and his face was filled with unbelievable shock. Yunju, his voice was hoarse, carrying a barely noticeable tremor. He handed Yi Shu over to the maid beside him and almost stumbled toward me, grabbing my wrist with a force so strong it was startling, as if afraid I were an illusion that would shatter at the slightest touch. "It's really you. You're not dead." you're alive." His words were incoherent, his eyes filled with undisguised ecstasy. That look of excitement, in the past, would have been enough to make me lose myself for a lifetime, mistakenly believing I was the treasure he cherished at the tip of his heart. Unfortunately, I knew I wasn't. I watched him expressionlessly, his slightly reddened eyes from agitation, his unrestrained behavior, and felt not a single ripple of emotion in my heart. It turns out that after the heart dies, even hatred becomes superfluous. "Young master," I said coldly, using force to break free from his grip. "You've mistaken me for someone else." Su Yang was taken aback, tightening his hold even more. "How could I possibly mistake you, Lu Yunju? I would recognize you even if you turned to ashes. Listen to me. That day I immediately sent people to search for you at the bottom of the cliff, but all they found were a few torn pieces of clothing and traces of blood. They all said you must have been taken by wild beasts. I thought you were dead." He eagerly explained, trying to seek my forgiveness from what he called his helpless circumstances. If it were before, hearing him speak like this might have swayed my heart, secretly rejoicing that he was not entirely heartless. But now, I only find it ironic. "I told you, you've mistaken me for someone else." My voice remained calm, carrying a distant politeness as I once again tried to brush his hand away. "Lord Su, you Ichu had, at some point, already come to stand by my side." His hand rested on Su Yang's wrist, applying slight pressure. Su Yang winced in pain and instinctively released me. Yu Ichu smoothly stepped forward, subtly shielding me behind him. "This is my apprentice, not the heir's old acquaintance. The heir should focus on his wife's condition first." Su Yang looked at Yu Ichu's protective stance toward me, then at my cold and distant expression, his face instantly darkening. "Cousin, I feel so unwell." From the consultation room, Yi Shu's weak and pained moans timely drifted in. This voice pulled Su Yang's rationality back a little. He took a deep look at me, then gritted his teeth and said, "I'll trouble the divine physician to treat my wife first." Yu Ichu nodded slightly and turned to enter the consultation room. After a short while, he came out, his expression unchanged. "Your wife has been invaded by evil wind, which triggered her old illness. Coupled with excessive worry, her qi and blood are stagnant. I have already used acupuncture to stabilize her condition. She will be fine after taking a few doses of medicine for recuperation." Su Yang went in to check and indeed saw Yi Shu's complexion had eased considerably. He breathed a sigh of relief, his gaze falling on me once again. "Lu Yunju," he said in a deep voice, with his usual commanding tone, "since you're not dead, come back with me. You will still be my personal guard." I almost let out a cold laugh. What makes him think I would ever go back to him after all that has happened? "You jest, Your Highness." I lowered my gaze, my tone indifferent. "I am now merely an apprentice of physician Yu, not a guard." "You," Su Yang choked with anger. His face darkening further, Yi Shu, supported by her maid, stepped out and glanced between Su Yang and me before speaking softly. "Cousin, everyone has their own path, why must you force the issue? I'm still feeling unwell, shall we return early?" Su Yang looked at Yi Shu's pale face. Suppressing his full anger and that indescribable discomfort, he scooped Yi Shu up into his arms and turned to stride toward the carriage. The carriage rumbled into the distance, kicking up a cloud of dust. Yu Ichu turned to look at me. "Are you okay?" He didn't press further about my past, which made me breathe a sigh of relief. I shook my head, revealing a genuine faint smile. "It's nothing. Let's continue sorting the herbs." In the following days, Su Yang would bring Yi Shu to the medical cottage for treatment punctually every day. He never took the initiative to speak another word to me, and rarely even cast a glance in my direction. All his thoughts and attention were entirely devoted to Yi Shu alone. He would carefully help her out of the carriage, patiently inquire about her every feeling, prepare candied fruits for her when she took her medicine, and hold her hand tightly while whispering words of comfort during her acupuncture sessions. That meticulous care and intimacy made them appear like a deeply affectionate couple. I watched coldly from the sidelines, feeling utterly indifferent. This was just as well. Since he had completely moved on and was focused on his beloved, I was content to remain detached, acting as an outsider while wholeheartedly following Yu Ichu in identifying medicinal herbs and studying pulse theory. Yu Ichu's medical skills were superb, and Yi Shu recovered quickly. After the final treatment, Yu Ichu confirmed that she had fully recovered and only needed to take good care of herself in the future. Su Yang expressed his gratitude solemnly, paid a generous consultation fee, and then carefully supported Yi Shu as they boarded the carriage and rode off into the distance. Watching the carriage disappear, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, I had ultimately underestimated Su Yang's persistence, or perhaps it was his unyielding desire for control. That afternoon, Yu Ichu went out to gather herbs, leaving only me and Zhu, who was drying medicinal herbs in the backyard. At the clinic, the sound of hoofbeats echoed once again outside the fence gate, and a group of guards in sturdy attire, each carrying a long sword at their waist, filed in one after another. In an instant, the small courtyard was packed to the brim. At the forefront stood Chen Feng, the captain of Su Yang's personal guard. Guard Lu. Chen Feng clasped his fists toward me, his tone still polite, but his posture carried an unyielding firmness. The young master requests your return. My heart sank, but I kept my expression neutral. I've already said. I am Physician Yu's apprentice, not some guard. Chen Feng's expression remained unchanged. The young master has made it clear, if Guard Lu insists on refusing, we will have no choice but to take action and dismantle this clinic. I was furious, a surge of anger rushing straight to my head. He actually used this method to force me into submission. Just after using Yu Ichu to cure Yi Shu, he could turn around and do such a thing, burning bridges and bullying others with his power. I thought his indifference toward me these past days meant he had finally let go, that he had accepted my death as a given. I never expected he was waiting for me here. He never truly intended to let me go. Those days of focusing on Yi Shu were nothing but an illusion to lull me into a false sense of security. Perhaps it was also a test of my reaction. Guard Lu, please do not make it difficult for your subordinate. Chen Feng stepped forward, his tone growing more serious. I looked at the group of well-trained guards before me, then glanced at this bamboo hut filled with the scent of medicine, a place that had given me new life and peace. Yu Ichu wasn't here, and Azhu was still just a child. I absolutely could not drag them into this, nor could I allow this sanctuary to be destroyed because of me. A fierce sense of humiliation and anger burned through my entire being, but I had no other choice. I took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the turbulent emotions inside me, and waved to Azhu, who had run out at the sound and now stood there with a pale, frightened face. Azhu, come here. Azhu timidly ran to my side. I crouched down, trying my best to keep my voice calm. Azhu, don't be afraid, your sister needs to go out for a while. When young Master Jiyu returns, tell him that I went to deal with some old matters. Let him not worry, and not look for me. Azhu nodded, not fully understanding, tears welling up in her eyes. I stood up and turned to Chen Feng, my gaze icy cold. Let's go. The wheels rolled, heading toward the man I had once sworn undying loyalty to but now only wished to escape. It had been several days since I was brought back to the heir's residence. I was placed in a secluded side room, undisturbed, yet it felt like house arrest. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of irony. In my past life, I had exhausted every effort to marry him, only to be rewarded with imprisonment and torment. In this life, I tried every possible way to stay away, yet he went to any lengths to tie me back to his side. Su Yang, what exactly do you want? That day, the weather was clear and fine, and a servant came to deliver a message, saying the young master wanted me to go to the mansion's entrance. I was suspicious, but I still went as instructed. Just as I reached the screen wall in front of the mansion, I heard Yi Shu's delicate, coquettish voice. Cousin, I've been cooped up in the mansion for so many days, I'm almost bored to death. The weather is so lovely today, won't you take me out for a walk? She clung to Su Yang's sleeve, gently swaying it as she spoke in a sweet, pleading tone. Su Yang had his back to me, so I couldn't see his expression, but I could hear his helpless yet doting reply. All right, as you wish. But you've only just recovered, so you mustn't overexert yourself. If you start feeling tired, you must tell me. Understood, cousin, you're the best. Su Yang seemed to notice my arrival and turned around. "You're here." His tone was calm. "Today I'm taking Aishu out for an outing. You will accompany us as protection. And you must ensure nothing goes wrong." I clenched my fists, feeling a strong urge to walk away on the spot. But then I remembered the ruthless threat he made that day about tearing down the Yunshan medical clinic, and the refusal that had risen to my lips was forced back down. "I cannot implicate you, Ichu." "Yes." I lowered my gaze, concealing all emotions in my eyes, leaving only a cold obedience. The carriage drove out of the city gate and arrived at a scenic lakeside in the outskirts of the capital. The spring scenery was beautiful, with willow branches swaying gently. It was indeed a good place to relax. Su Yang carefully helped Yishu out of the car, and the two walked side by side ahead, speaking in low voices. Yishu occasionally covered her mouth with a light laugh, and when Su Yang turned to look at her, there was a tenderness in his eyes that I had never received. Watching this scene, my heart felt strangely calm. It turns out that as long as I no longer like him and let go of that infatuation, seeing him intimate with someone else no longer hurts. Just as we were walking along a shaded path, a sudden change occurred. A sharp arrow whistled through the air. It shot out unexpectedly from the dense forest ahead to the side, heading straight for Su Yang and Yishu. Almost by instinct, Su Yang's face changed dramatically. He immediately pulled Yishu tightly into his arms, turning his back toward the direction of the arrow, and at the same time, his other hand, almost instinctively, yanked me forward with force. I hadn't expected him to do that at all. Stumbling, I was pulled right in front of them, directly facing the swiftly approaching cold arrow. At that moment, my heart uncontrollably ached with a sharp pain. In countless life-and-death situations in my past life, I had long grown accustomed to charging ahead of him, shielding him from all the open attacks and hidden arrows, and he had never once thought to protect me by standing in front of me. Now that it was Yishu, he would actually risk his life to protect her. In the blink of an eye, my wrist twisted, and the hand that had been resting on the sword hilt instantly drew the blade. A gleaming arc of sword light sliced through the air, accompanied by a sharp clang, precisely cleaving the arrow aimed at me in two. But there was no time to evade the second arrow, which came from a tricky angle. Thud. The arrow struck deep into my left shoulder blade, the immense force sending me stumbling backward a step. "Yunju," Su Yang's voice was filled with horror. My blood splattered across his face. Su Yang froze, staring at my shoulder rapidly staining with blood, then at his own hand that had instinctively pulled me in front of the arrow. The color drained from his face as he stammered incoherently. "I didn't mean to pull you in front of the arrow. I didn't know it was you. I just reacted instinctively." I had no desire to hear his explanation at all. The intense pain made cold sweat break out on my forehead. I gritted my teeth, swung my sword to deflect the other cold arrows that followed closely, and together with the other guards who had quickly reacted, I fiercely confronted the several black-clad assassins charging out from the woods. The clashing of blades, furious roars, and agonizing screams filled the air without pause. Enduring the excruciating pain in my shoulder, my swordplay remained sharp and fierce, each move carrying a kind of desperate resolve, as if to vent my emotions. Blood continuously gushed from the wound, and my strength was rapidly fading. I don't know how much time had passed, but the assassins were finally either driven back or killed. Once I confirmed that it was temporarily safe, the breath I had been holding in suddenly relaxed, a sweet taste rose in my throat, and I abruptly spat out a mouthful of blood. My vision went black, and I could no longer hold on, falling straight backward. "Yunju," in a daze, I heard Su Yang's terrified, distorted scream. He seemed to stumble over, trembling as he knelt beside me, his hands hovering helplessly in midair as if afraid to touch me. "Yunju, Lu Yunju, wake up, don't you dare fall asleep." His voice was filled with panic and urgent anger. "Doctor, get a doctor, hurry." At that moment, he seemed to have forgotten Yishu, whom he had been shielding in his arms, his heart and eyes completely focused on me. Covered in blood, he carefully, as if handling a rare treasure, lifted me into his arms horizontally. His blood-stained arm was steady, yet carried a barely noticeable tremor. "Hold on, I'm taking you to find a doctor. You must not let anything happen to you." Holding me, he rushed toward the carriage like a madman, in the wind. Yi Shu's tearful call seemed to faintly drift over, "Cousin," but he seemed unable to hear me. I struggled to lift my heavy eyelids, grabbing the front of his robe. My voice was faint but stubborn. "Go to Yunshan Medical Clinic, find Dr. Yu." I couldn't return to the prince's residence. And even less could I let the physicians there examine me. Once my identity as a woman was exposed, the tragedy of my past life would follow me like a shadow. I absolutely could not repeat the same mistakes. Su Yang paused in his steps, looked down at me, his eyes filled with red streaks. He agreed almost without hesitation. All right, we'll go to Yunshan Medical Cottage, hang in there." With his reply, I completely lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness again, the familiar, comforting scent of medicinal herbs lingered at the tip of my nose. I slowly opened my eyes, and the simple bamboo roof of Yunshan Medical Cottage came into view. The pain in my shoulder blade was still sharp, but it had been properly treated and carefully bandaged. It was already the second day. Sunlight streamed through the window lattice, casting warm patches of light. I lay there, motionless, my mind uncontrollably replaying the chilling scene from yesterday. Su Yang had pulled me in front of him without hesitation to block the arrow. It turns out that some instinctive reactions can hurt more than deliberate harm. It laid bare the true place I held in Su Yang's heart, an insignificant existence. One that could be sacrificed at any moment. Awake, a gentle voice, tinged with a barely noticeable reproach, sounded from the doorway. I turned my head and saw Yu Ichu walking in with a bowl of medicine. "I've only been away for a few days, and you've already managed to get yourself into this state again," he sighed, his tone carrying the helplessness of a doctor dealing with a disobedient patient, along with a hint of deeper concern. "The old injuries from your last fall off the cliff haven't even fully healed, and now you've added new wounds, and such a dangerous arrow injury at that. Are you made of iron? Do you not feel pain?" I knew he was worried about me. This pure concern was entirely different from Su Yang's tension, which was mixed with far too many complicated emotions. My icy heart seemed to be infused with a warm current, no matter how much he frowned and scolded me. I just curved my lips into a smile and nodded repeatedly. "I know, Dr. I'll be more careful next time and won't get hurt so easily." Yu Ichu looked at my smiling face and shook his head helplessly, clearly at a loss for what to do with me. He fell silent for a moment, his expression gradually turning serious. "Yunju, there's something I want to ask, but I'm not sure if I should." "Ask away." I reined in my smile. "You and that Yuan Marquis heir." He paused, as if carefully choosing his words. "The way he brought you here yesterday, it didn't seem like the attitude a master would have toward an ordinary guard. Between the two of you, is there?" I did not deny it. "Does he not know you're a woman?" Yu Ichu asked again. I nodded. "If he knew you were a woman, given his state yesterday, you might have a chance to become the crown princess." I shook my head vigorously. "I dare not aspire to such an honor. I only wish for peace and freedom." I looked earnestly at Yu Ichu. "Dr. Yu, I beg you, please keep my identity as a woman a secret." "All right," he replied without hesitation. "I promise you, I will not reveal it to anyone." He looked at me with clear eyes, carrying a reassuring strength. "Here, you are just my little apprentice. Do whatever you wish." Under Yu Ichu's careful care, the arrow wound on my shoulder blade gradually healed. Though there was still a pulling pain with movement, it was no longer a serious issue. Every day in the backyard of the medical hut, I gradually moved my injured left arm, readjusting to the feeling of regaining control over my strength. To my surprise and relief, Su Yang had not appeared again since that day, which was unusual for him. No entanglement, no commands. As if the one who had held me and frantically searched for a clinic that day was not him. Later, from the occasional gossipage you heard from the foot of the mountain, I finally learned the reason. It turned out that on that night, when Su Yang carried me, covered in blood, into the clinic, his distraught and frantic state had eventually made its way back to the Yuan Marquis manor. The Marquis and his wife were furious. They could not tolerate the fact that their soon-to-be-married heir would behave so recklessly for the sake of a guard, especially since that guard was a man. A strict order on paper confined Su Yang to his residence. forbidding him from ever approaching the Yunshan medical cottage again. Hearing this, I felt nothing but relief. This was for the best, it saved a great deal of trouble. Our worlds were always meant to be clearly separated. That day, I was carefully stretching my somewhat stiff left arm. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps, heavy with a suppressed aura, came from behind me. My body stiffened, and I almost instinctively wanted to turn around and avoid it. Yunju. Su Yang's voice carried a hint of hoarseness and exhaustion. I slowly turned around and gave a distant bow. Your Highness. He stood a few steps away, his figure still upright, but a lingering gloom shrouded his brows and eyes. He looked at me with a complicated gaze, churning with emotions I couldn't understand, nor did I wish to. Silence spread between us, carrying an almost stagnant awkwardness. For a long while, he seemed to finally make up his mind, speaking with difficulty in a low voice. I came today to tell you something. I watched him quietly, saying nothing. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixed intently on me. The one I've truly loved all along is you. My heart gave a sharp pang, not from excitement, but from the sheer absurdity and irony of it all. Does he love me? If he truly loved me, why in our past life, after having me, did he torment me so recklessly? No, Su Yang loves no one. He only loves himself. When he couldn't have me, he thought I was special. Once he had me, I became a weed to be trampled at will. I curled my lips slightly. You jest, my lord. Su Yang seemed stung by my indifference. He took a step forward and hurriedly explained, it's true, that day at the cliff, I wanted to save you, but reason told me I had to sever this absurd attachment. So I chose Aishu. I forced myself to be cruel to you. I just find it all so noisy. Your Highness, I interrupted him, you are about to be married. Such words are improper according to etiquette. Please be careful with your speech. Su Yang was stunned. He looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. Perhaps he expected to see my shock, my grievance, or even my delight. Yet I never expected it to be such utter indifference. The light in his eyes gradually dimmed, tinged with a defeated sense of loneliness. He remained silent for a long time before speaking in a hoarse voice. In 3 days, I will marry Aishu. I nodded slightly. Congratulations to the heir and Miss Yi on a harmonious union for 100 years, like the phoenix and its mate. With that, I turned around to sort through the herbs. A long silence followed behind me. I could feel his intense, complicated gaze fixed on my back. In the end, it dissolved into a barely audible sigh. Footsteps sounded, fading into the distance. I never looked back. On the day of Su Yang and Yi Shu's grand wedding, drums and gongs filled the air, and red silk covered the ground. The entire capital was immersed in a clamorous celebration. I stayed at the Yunshan Medical Clinic, just like any ordinary day, perhaps because all the commoners had flocked to witness the once-in-a-century grand wedding. The clinic was unusually quiet. For a full half-day, not a single person came seeking treatment. In the warm afternoon sunlight, I moved a rocking chair under the old tree in the courtyard, brewed a pot of light tea, and picked up a medical book. Savoring this rare moment of peace, the writing on the page gradually blurred as a warm breeze brushed by, carrying the faint, bitter scent of medicinal herbs. Unconsciously, I drifted into a deep slumber. When I awoke again, the scene before me had abruptly changed. There was a carved canopy bed, curtains of brocade silk, and on the purple sandalwood desk lay familiar wolf hair brushes and inkstones. This is clearly Su Yang's bedchamber within the Marquis residence. In my past life, as his wife, I had spent countless days and nights in this very room. I could never mistake it. My heart sank abruptly, and I immediately sat up, warily scanning my surroundings. Awake, a voice heavy with the scent of alcohol came from the doorway. Su Yang, still clad in the unremoved crimson wedding attire, staggered in unsteadily. His eyes were hazy with drunkenness, yet they churned with an almost obsessive emotion. Step by step, he approached the bed, his gaze burning as it locked onto me. Yunju, can we go back to how we used to be? Today is the joyous day of the heir's wedding, I said coldly, my voice dripping with undisguised sarcasm. A moment of spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Instead of seeking out your bride, why have you resorted to such means to bring me here? What is the reasoning behind this? I stood up and distanced myself from him, my tone firm. Release me at once, otherwise. If word gets out that the heir of Nguyen who forcibly abducted a man on his wedding night, I'm afraid you'll become the laughingstock of the entire capital." Upon hearing this, Su Yang not only did not retreat, but instead let out a low, soft laugh. The laughter carried a hint of reckless madness, a joke. "Since I can't have you, then I'll imprison you forever, make you see only me day and night, make you belong to me alone." As he spoke, he actually lunged toward me, trying to grab hold of me. I thought he had truly gone mad. While dodging sideways, she pushed him away with force. In the struggle, the simple wooden hairpin that held his topknot in place was knocked loose by his movements. It fell to the ground with a clatter. His long, dark hair cascaded down like a waterfall in an instant. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. Su Yang's movements stiffened, his drunkenness seemingly jolted away by the sudden turn of events. He stared wide-eyed, unable to believe the sight of my long, flowing hair. His throat seemed to tighten, his voice hoarse and distorted. You're actually a woman." After the immense shock, a wave of overwhelming fury and the pain of betrayal washed over him. He grabbed my shoulders abruptly, his eyes bloodshot as he demanded, "Why didn't you say anything? How could you be so cruel? I like you, I don't believe you couldn't tell, yet you kept it from me all this time. You just stood by and watched me suffer and suppress these forbidden feelings. Did you find it amusing to toy with me?" I met his furious and pained gaze, a cold smile curling at the corner of my lips. "Is that so, Su Yang? Let me ask you this, if I had revealed to you that day at the cliff that I was a woman, would you have chosen to save me?" Su Yang almost blurted out without a hint of hesitation, "Of course I would save you." "And then," I pressed, my gaze sharp as a blade, "then you would be overjoyed that I am a woman, you would treat me like a treasure you've finally found, you would marry me without a second thought, hold me in your arms, and confess the feelings you've suppressed all these years, saying how you've finally gotten what you wished for. Am I right?" Su Yang froze, seemingly stunned by how accurately I had predicted his possible reaction. I continued, my tone calm but carrying a bone-chilling coldness, "And then, in the countless days and nights to come, you would think again and again of Yi Shu, who died a tragic death because of your choice. That guilt would gnaw at your heart like a venomous snake, day after day, year after year, until eventually, all that guilt would turn into resentment toward me. You would think that if I hadn't deliberately revealed my identity as a woman to deceive you, Yi Shu wouldn't have died. You would completely despise me, torment me, and wish that it had been me who died back then." The anger and drunkenness on Su Yang's face vanished completely, replaced by a near-terrified pallor. He staggered back as if struck by lightning. How could you know about the dreams I once had?" I looked at his expression, as if he had seen a ghost, and felt nothing but cold desolation in my heart. "Su Yang," I spoke softly, my voice tinged with weariness and mockery, "that wasn't just your dream, it was a nightmare I lived through." Su Yang seemed to have all the strength drained from him. Standing dejectedly in place, he stared fixedly at me, his eyes filled with chaos and shock, along with an indescribable fear. The room fell silent, with only the occasional crackle of the red candles burning. After a long while, he abruptly turned around and rushed out of the room, his retreating figure exuding a sense of panic and disarray. I stood where I was, slowly raising my hand to smooth my disheveled long hair. The troubles and disputes of the capital city had finally become a thing of the past. After discussing with Yu Ichu, we decided to close the Yunshan clinic. This is not the end, but the beginning of another journey. We packed our bags, loaded the carriage with herbs and medical books, and set off on our journey as wandering physicians. Accompanied by our Zhu, whose little face was flushed with excitement, the carriage rumbled along, leaving behind the city that had trapped me through past and present lives. The mountain breeze brushed against our faces, carrying the free scent of grass, trees, and earth. Our Zhu leaned against the carriage window, watching the scenery recede continuously, her heart leaping with joy. But then, as if remembering something, she turned her head and asked curiously, "Young master, didn't you always say that one must settle in one place and immerse oneself in study to truly benefit the people? Why have you now taken a liking to wandering?" Yu Ichu was lowering his gaze, reading a medical book in his hand. Upon hearing this, he glanced subtly past me, then smiled faintly and said to Arju, "Reading 10,000 books must be paired with traveling 10,000 miles. Only by witnessing the different customs and sufferings of various places can one's medical skills truly advance." I understood in my heart, it wasn't that he had suddenly changed his temperament, he simply didn't want me to have any further entanglements with the capital or with Su Yang. He wanted to take me far away from that shadow, to give me a world of boundless possibilities. I met his gaze and offered a faint smile. No words were needed, our hearts already understood each other, heading south. The green mountains and clear waters gradually unfolded before us. We traveled intermittently, stopping to provide medical treatment in villages and distribute medicine in towns. Ichu, with his exceptional medical skills and compassionate heart, took the lead, while I assisted by his side, becoming increasingly adept at treating injuries and identifying medicinal herbs. Arju had truly become our little helper, bustling about with endless laughter. When we reached the south of the Yangtze River, it was already the season of misty rain. We stayed temporarily in a small town by the water, with its white walls and black tiles, small bridges and flowing streams, creating a unique sense of tranquility. One day, while resting at a tea shop in the town, I happened to overhear merchants at the next table discussing anecdotes from the capital. It was nothing more than the rise and fall of noble families, and among them, the son of the Marquis of Arnuen was mentioned. I heard that after marrying the young lady of the Yi family, the young master was not on good terms with her. Not long after, he actually divorced her on the grounds of failure to bear children. TSK, truly. But what's even more peculiar is that the young master later found a woman from somewhere, said to bear some resemblance in the eyes and brows to his former personal guard who had gone missing. He indulged in her charms all day. Utterly absurd, exactly. In the end, it said he actually died right on that woman's bed. Sigh, he brought it upon himself. And what about the divorced Lady Yi? What else could be done? Her family found it shameful and were unwilling to take her in. It is said that, in utter despair, she went to the Shueyu nunnery outside the city, where she now spends the rest of her days with the dim light of an ancient lamp and the company of Buddha. The murmurs were not loud, yet they clearly reached my ears. My hand holding the teacup remained as steady as a rock, my heart utterly calm, devoid of hatred, resentment, or even the slightest ripple of emotion. Su Yang's obsession and absurdity, Yishu's dependence and final outcome, it all felt like listening to a story from a playbook. Entirely unrelated to myself, those fervent loves and hatreds, those entangled obsessions, ultimately faded with time, leaving no trace in the wind. I placed a few copper coins on the table, rose from the tea house, and made my way back along the damp, bluestone-paved path. Returning to the small riverside courtyard we had rented, I caught a faint, sweet medicinal aroma wafting from the kitchen before I even stepped inside. Pushing open the loosely closed bamboo gate, I saw the warm glow from the stove illuminating Ichu's handsome, focused profile. He was rolling up his sleeves, carefully watching the heat of the medicine pot, as who sat on a small stool nearby, earnestly peeling lotus seeds while chattering non-stop about the sights and sounds she had encountered in the market that day. "You've returned just in time." Ichu looked up and saw me, his brows relaxing as he said gently, "I found some good poria and Chinese yam today and made you a medicinal stew. It'll be ready in another moment. Yunju, sister, come quickly and see the lotus seeds I've peeled, aren't they white?" As who raised her small hand, proudly presenting a handful of lotus flesh. Wispy smoke curls upward, the aroma of medicine lingers in the air, the lamplight is warm, and two figures stand side by side. As I gaze upon this scene, filled with the warmth of everyday life and a sense of peace, my heart is enveloped in a profound and steady warmth, unlike anything I've ever felt before. All those past grievances, the blood, tears, and entangled obsessions, they have truly faded into the distance. From now on, I will have a good person by my side. And the road ahead will be smooth and clear. I leaned against the doorframe, watching them, and broke into a relaxed and radiant smile. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, There is another similar story, let's continue to see. On the night I was conferred as the imperial consort, the emperor had taken an excessive amount of aphrodisiacs. He died in my bed, before I could even put on my outer robe. The crown prince, who was 3 years older than me, stormed into the hall with his men. He accused me of seducing him with my beauty and being so unrestrained that it led to the emperor's death. I scrambled over on my hands and knees, clinging to his leg, and begged for mercy. Your Highness, I've been wronged. I haven't even finished taking off my clothes. How could I possibly be seducing anyone? He leaned down, pinched my chin, and with a scornful smile, his gaze drifted toward my slightly loosened inner garment. You've always been full of lies. Do you really think I'd believe you now? He forcefully turned my face away, stood up with his hands behind his back, and the guards behind him immediately stepped forward to drag me out. I felt like crying but had no tears. Although I possess beauty, I truly did not seduce the emperor. It was he who pulled me in. I never expected him to be so useless. If he had to die, why drag me down with him? I am Mu Qingqing, daughter of the mighty general, and my mother is the childhood friend of Empress Jiang. According to my mother, the two of them once fought over a piece of pastry, and in the end, my mother won, leaving Empress Jiang sulking for a long time. But having grown up together since childhood, they were more like sisters than friends. How could a mere piece of pastry affect their bond? After my mother got married, Empress Jiang entered the palace and gave birth to a son a year later. The emperor was overjoyed and immediately appointed him as the crown prince. 3 years later, my mother gave birth to me. When she went to pay respects to the empress, she would always bring me along. Empress Jiang was very fond of me and bestowed many small trinkets upon me. Empress Jiang often joked that I was destined to become the crown princess when I grew up. However, Crown Prince Xiao Shuren had always disliked being arranged by others and was particularly indifferent toward me. But when I was 12, my father was falsely accused of defecting to the enemy. Without any investigation, the damned emperor sent troops to surround and annihilate him. To display his benevolence, he claimed that my father had once achieved many military merits and thus exempted the family from the crime of association. The entire clan was overwhelmed with gratitude. Only my mother went to the palace gates, beating the drum and shouting that it was an injustice. But since it was all a deliberate scheme, how could they possibly see her? After returning home, she threw herself against the coffin containing my father's belongings and died on the spot. My departure or stay became a difficult problem. Which clansman would dare to take in a daughter who has betrayed her country and joined the enemy? Isn't this clearly opposing the emperor? I knelt before my parents' memorial tablet and cried for 3 whole days, not eating a single bite of food. As luck would have it, Empress Jiang came to pay her respects, and I fainted into her arms. When I woke up again, I was already in the side hall of Shaohua Palace. Empress Jiang was a kind-hearted woman. Seeing that I had no one to rely on, she requested the emperor's permission to let me enter the palace and serve as a little maid by her side. At first, he did not agree. But he could not withstand the empress's repeated pleas and eventually consented. She did not treat me as a servant, but rather as her own daughter. She didn't insist that I must excel at needlework, but she required me to read every day and assigned tasks, with punishments for failing to complete them. Watching me endure the punishment, my hands red and swollen, she would cry while applying ointment for me, murmuring under her breath, "I walk through the wilds, where the wheat grows lush and green." I knew she wanted me, through reading, to develop an independent mind, free from being controlled by others, to be able to control one's own destiny, to become strong, as resilient as wheat, as tenacious as wild grass. But such days did not last long. The following May, Empress Jiang suddenly fell seriously ill, and her moments of clarity grew fewer with each passing day. The female official in charge of the Empress, Chief Stewardess Li, searched the entire Shaohua Palace but found no answers. It seemed this matter was far from simple. I knelt outside the Jingda Palace, begging the emperor to save Her Majesty, but he refused each time, citing the pressures of state affairs. But I clearly saw Consort Shu carrying a food box going in. How could he be unavailable? He only cares about favoring other consorts, completely forgetting about his lawful wife. Empress Jiang has been ill for so long, and the overbearing consort Shu has visited Xiaohua Palace more times than the emperor himself. When I returned to Xiaohua Palace, Chief Steward Li was standing by the bed, weeping quietly. Seeing me return, she waved her hand, signaling for me to come over. I leaned over her bedside, held her hand against my cheek, and couldn't stop the tears from falling. Her face was as pale as paper, so frail it was heartbreaking, as if she might shatter at any moment. Yet even then, she was still comforting me, forcing a faint smile and parting her lips to say, "What worries me most is you. You are a child with your own ideas, and that is good. Do not grieve for my departure, this is liberation. Do not seek revenge for me." She knew I was the type to hold grudges, and before leaving, she carefully reminded me not to get involved, but she treated me as her own child. How could I not seek justice for her? At this moment, Xiao Shuren finally returned. He had been sent to patrol the salt trade in the south, and it was clear he had defied the imperial decree to come back early. He frantically pushed me away, knelt by the bedside, his eyes already reddened, his voice choked with tears. "Mother," seeing this, the empress could not bring herself to scold him for returning to the capital early. "My son, do not blame your mother for being strict with you since childhood. I only wish for you to grow stronger, and stronger still, so that you may do as you wish and protect those you love." Empress Jiang was even stricter with me than she was with Xiao Shuren. He once said to me with a hint of jealousy, "It's as if you were the one born of her." In truth, he didn't dislike me, he was envious that I could receive the empress's tenderness. Empress Jiang raised her hand, which had become so thin it was little more than bone. I quickly crawled to her side and grasped it. Instead, she placed my hand into Xiao Shuren's, offering her final instructions. "Anna, after I depart, I entrust Qingqing to you. You must protect her well." If the empress had said such words before, he would have surely refuted them. But today, he agreed without hesitation, likely to put her mind at ease. She had no strength left. Her eyes fixed on the canopy above the bed, reflecting on her life, her lips, already parched, parted slightly, deeply in love, yet without hope. With that, her hand slipped from mine, and she breathed her last. The crown prince wept uncontrollably. I knew who she was thinking of in her final moments. That day, I entered her study and found a very beautiful brocade box, but inside were countless bamboo slips, each clearly carved with my father's name. It turned out that what she and my mother were fighting over wasn't the pastries. The empress had passed away, and the palace servants knelt in mourning throughout the room. The crown prince and I rose to our feet, took 2 steps back, and kowtowed 3 times to the empress. Tears fell drop by drop onto the cold ground. The emperor was a hypocrite through and through. From the empress's passing to her funeral, he only came once. In front of his ministers, he feigned overwhelming grief and ordered a 7-day suspension of court affairs, only to turn around and indulge in revelry with his other consorts. The sudden death of his daughter naturally required an explanation from Chancellor Jiang. In the imperial court, however, the emperor broke down in tears, claiming he had failed to restrain the palace consorts. This allowed a ruthless individual to seize the opportunity and slip a slow-acting poison into the empress's medicinal tonic. He beat his chest repeatedly, insisting it was all his fault, making himself appear so deeply devoted. Seeing this, the ministers could only advise him to restrain his grief and take care of his imperial health. He then bestowed many gifts, and even Chancellor Jiang could say no more. However, Chief Steward Li carefully examined the medicinal meals and found no issues. Although Consort Shu had come to Xiaohua Palace to show off, she was timid and afraid of death, so it was unlikely that she would dare to do such a thing. During this period, she received the most favor. And since she came from humble origins with no backing, she was the perfect scapegoat, and all of this pointed directly at the lofty emperor himself. Why would he do such a thing? It all came down to one word: fear. My father was also framed by him for this very reason, dying on the frontier, his body lost without a trace. After the queen was buried, it was time to deal with the crown prince's defiance of the imperial decree. In the imperial court, the emperor seized this opportunity to punish the crown prince. The crown prince's faction pleaded for leniency on his behalf, arguing that filial piety was paramount in Yongchao. The crown prince had defied the decree out of necessity to see the queen one last time, which was understandable. If he were severely punished for this, the people might say the emperor was unkind and merciless. However, the third prince's faction argued that defying an imperial decree was a grave offense. As the saying goes, the Son of Heaven is subject to the same law as the common people. Without punishment, how could the emperor command the respect of the masses? With this matter, the emperor could not depose him from his position as crown prince, so he ordered him to be sent to Weiling. Under the pretext of gaining experience, the next day, he packed his belongings and set off for Weiling. I gathered some valuables and clothes and followed behind him. It seemed he had not taken the empress's advice to heart, as he coldly said to me, "Why are you following me? My parents are gone, my clan has abandoned me, the queen who was kind to me has passed away, and now even he is leaving, I don't know where to go anymore." I lowered my head and looked at the delicate cloud-patterned shoes on my feet, the ones the queen had personally made for me. Perhaps seeing me with no one to rely on, lonely and pitiful, he finally agreed to take me along, overjoyed. I stood on my tiptoes and planted a kiss on his cheek. His face instantly flushed red, and he scolded me for being shameless. But I've always been like this. Although he appears aloof and reserved, he is especially sparing with his words when it comes to me. But I know he likes me, knowing that I'm afraid of the dark. He once caught thousands of fireflies and released them in my bedroom on my birthday. Once, when I accidentally scalded myself with boiling water, I hid away to avoid worrying the empress, crying as I blew on the reddened area. He was the first to find me, bringing the finest burn ointment to apply, which prevented any scars from forming. We had just left Kyoto when the carriage suddenly came to a halt. He lifted me down with one arm and handed me over to a kind-looking couple, instructing them to take good care of me. The couple were strangers to me, and besides, the silver he gave them was too little, not enough to get by on. He leaped onto his horse, cracked his whip, and rode away. I broke free from the woman's grasp and chased after him, crying out, "Your Highness, why are you abandoning Qingqing too? Qingqing has no one but you." My foot, however, failed me. I stumbled and twisted it, falling heavily to the ground with a pained cry. He was still concerned about me. After all, he turned back, reined in his horse, and leaped down from the saddle. He picked me up from the ground where I was curled in pain. The sudden lift made me instinctively wrap my arms tightly around his neck. His brow was furrowed, yet his eyes revealed a deep concern. "Why must you suffer like this?" I understood his kindness. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and he did not want me to get hurt. But if I'm not by his side, I can't personally avenge them. In the end, he took me with him. This training journey was truly fraught with danger. We encountered 5 or 6 groups of assassins along the way. There was no need to guess, it was clear these people were sent by the emperor and consort Li. The emperor had caused the death of the empress, and naturally, it was the crown prince's turn next. Consort Li, the mother of the third prince, was also paving the way for her son. Fortunately, Chancellor Jiang, concerned for the crown prince's safety, had sent elite assassins of the highest caliber. They finally reached their destination, although the crown prince had made mistakes. He had not been deposed and was ultimately to return to the capital. The county magistrate personally greeted them at the city gate and arranged their accommodations. However, Weiling was not a prosperous area. The land was insufficient for the people, and the most common cases handled by the government office were fights and brawls. As the saying goes, the mountains are high, and the emperor is far away. Most of the commoners were unruly and difficult to govern, yet the residence they were provided was excessively luxurious, even comparable to the Eastern Palace. I thought the crown prince would politely decline, but unexpectedly, he resolutely accepted and even gave a considerable amount of silver. The county magistrate left happily. Today, I stood for too long, and my feet began to ache. I couldn't help but say, "Your Highness, my legs hurt." Although his expression remained as cold as ever, he still scooped me up in his arms. "You're so delicate." Back in the room, he massaged me for a long while. After he left, I immediately gathered all the valuable items in my room and quietly took them out of the residence to pawn. seeing that even the magistrate's regular clothes had patches. He definitely couldn't have afforded to buy this mansion on his own. There must be someone backing him, and these things must never be kept. When I returned, I saw Xiao Shuren in my room. I'm done for, he's been discovered, and he hates being deceived the most. He sat expressionless at the desk and said in a deep voice, "You were just complaining about your leg hurting, and now you can suddenly walk. Actually, I didn't injure any bones or tendons. I've been fine for a while now." I limped toward him on my left leg, but his frown deepened, and his voice grew even lower. "Little liar, you injured your right leg." He stood up to leave, and I reached out to grab his sleeve, never expecting a crisp snap from my ankle. "Damn, it's really broken this time." He was truly angry. He called a doctor for me but didn't come to see me for several days. He only sent a maid to attend to me, named Chunliu. It was already half a month later when I could barely walk. Chunliu helped me out of the room for a walk, only to find the entire residence empty, with only 1 or 2 servants left in the courtyard. "Where is His Highness?" Replying to the young lady, "His Highness has gone to distribute porridge." I breathed a sigh of relief, glad that he hadn't abandoned me and run off. This year, the border region received very little rain, and the crops yielded almost no harvest, just as I had thought. He sold off all the valuable items and exchanged them for rice from the south. He began setting up shelters in the eastern part of the city to distribute porridge. And the people all praised the crown prince for his wisdom and virtue. But the court never allocated funds. If other refugees were to flee here, this little money wouldn't last long. The empress once explained to me the book *Chimin Yaoshu*, which states that quinoa is a cold-resistant, drought-tolerant crop, easy to cultivate, with high yield and a short growth cycle. Without waiting for my leg to fully heal, I went through great effort to find some seeds. Cleared a patch of empty land in the estate, and planted them with chundao. I saw Xiao Shuren again 5 days later, as I was sitting in a reclining chair in the courtyard, gazing at the star-filled sky. He had changed into coarse cloth clothes, and there was no trace left of the once lofty crown prince. "You know how to grow quinoa." I rocked gently in the reclining chair and said proudly, "Your Highness, do not underestimate Ching Ching." Even the Empress has praised Ching Ching for her mastery of the essential techniques for the welfare of the people. He stuffed a bag of seeds into my hand. "There is a plot of land in the northern part of the city, and it would be a waste to leave it unused. I entrust the task of planting quinoa to Ching Ching. Xu Jiao will assist you." He actually entrusted such an important matter to me. I stood up in pleasant surprise, only to stumble slightly on my foot. Fortunately, he held me steady. Letting me sit on his lap, he cupped his hands and blew warm breath into them, then gently massaged my ankle. Once his hands had warmed up, I wrapped my arms around his neck and pressed my lips to his cheek. I secretly smiled to myself. Even after kissing him so many times, I still couldn't help but blush. These days, we've been busy farming during the day and dealing with assassins at night, just trying to survive. This isn't training, it's a trial by fire, fortunately, with Xiao Shuren's help. The once filthy and chaotic Viling has undergone a great transformation, and incidents of fighting and brawling have also decreased significantly. The county magistrate is not a bad person by nature. After all, he hopes for the people to live well. Seeing the crown prince so devoted to the people, even eating and living with them, and working to improve their livelihoods, he secretly admired him. Why doesn't he admire me? To increase the quinoa yield, I've been guarding the fields every day. And my face has turned quite dark. In just 3 years, Viling has become a well-known town, beloved by all its people. Upon learning the reason why the crown prince was sent to Viling, I felt indignant on his behalf, saying that the current emperor treats his children differently, favoring the third prince while mistreating the crown prince. Even the children have started making up rhymes about it, but these words would only be useful if they reached the emperor's ears, as expected. 3 months later, the emperor sent someone to bring the crown prince back to the capital. I followed him, trailing along eagerly as we returned. In the carriage, he didn't seem as happy as I had anticipated. Instead, he questioned me. "Was it you?" Was he asking about the children's nursery rhymes or the words that have spread to the capital? Well, I made up the nursery rhymes. And the words in the capital saying the emperor is not a kind father, I sent a message to have my childhood friend spread them. Yes, I took the initiative and confessed honestly, but he didn't blame me for it. We've finally returned, and it seems just as it was when we left, except that the streets are now lined with commoners. Welcome back to the capital, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Many young ladies from noble families threw flowers at him. Surprisingly, he accepted them all and brought every single one back to the Eastern Palace. The scent of the flowers made me so dizzy that I took the opportunity while he was meeting with the emperor to throw them all away. It had been a long time since the father and son last saw each other, so the emperor must have had much to say to him. He did not return to the Eastern Palace until evening. In my hand was an imperial decree, and out of curiosity, I snatched it to take a look. It was a marriage decree, granting the second legitimate daughter of Minister Li Nanchu, to be the crown princess, in other words, the niece of consort Li. What a clever move, pitting the crown prince and the third prince's factions against each other, while also proving that the emperor is not biased toward either side. Xiao Shuren suddenly embraced me, his tone softer than ever before. My love, please be patient a little longer. I will marry you. This was the first time he had said such words to me. I had thought he only regarded it as the empress's jest, never expecting he had kept it in his heart all along. The imperial edict fell to the ground, my hands slowly crept up his back, and a faint, sorrowful smile touched the corners of my lips. Very well, my love will wait for your highness. At the emperor's birthday banquet, that was the first time I saw Li Nanchu. She was like a blooming peony, her every movement exuding grace and elegance. Yet I was merely the daughter of a disgraced official, outwardly serving as Xiao Shuren's personal maid. How could I ever compare to her? Xiao Shuren called my name several times before I snapped back to reality. Holding the congratulatory gift, I knelt on the ground and respectfully presented it. The eunuch in charge accepted it. The freesia hairpin on my head caught the emperor's attention. You are Mu Qingqing. This freesia hairpin was bestowed upon you by the empress. I lowered my head even further and replied, Your Majesty, that is correct. As one grows old, one tends to reminisce about the past. He remained silent for a long while before signaling for me to lift my head. Although the harsh conditions in Viling had taken a toll on my skin, the Crown Prince found me the finest restorative cream upon my return to the capital, and my complexion recovered even better than before. I slowly lifted my head, a trace of fear evident in my eyes. You've grown into a young lady now, and your features are becoming more and more like the Empress's. Unknowingly, it has already been 3 years since the Empress left me. As he spoke, he covered his face, wiping away tears, pretending to be deeply nostalgic, utterly disgusting. After a long while, he asked again, How old are you? 16. Just came of age. It's the age for marriage. Do you have someone you like? Does he really enjoy playing matchmaker? Before I could respond, Xiao Shuren stepped forward and knelt before the hall, pleading, Father, I have long admired Qingqing and boldly request your permission to grant me marriage, to take Mu Qingqing as my liangdi. This put the emperor in a difficult position. If he agreed, he would offend Minister Li. If he refused, he would embarrass his capable crown prince. He lowered his head and looked at me, asking, Mu Qingqing, are you willing? This is what the crown prince meant by marrying me, taking me as his concubine. I looked around at their expressions. The crown prince's face was full of anticipation. Li Nanchu's expression darkened, his eyes fixed intently on me. I raised my hands to my eyebrows, bowed deeply, and spoke with unwavering determination. I am well aware of my humble status and am unworthy of His Highness the Crown Prince. The Emperor seemed pleased with my response and asked me once more if I had made up my mind. Of course, I had made up my mind, and I nodded in confirmation. After returning to the Eastern Palace, he pulled me all the way back to the inner hall. The palace attendants, having never seen the Crown Prince in such a state, all stepped aside to avoid us. He closed the door, cornered me against the wall, pinned my hands above my head, and looked at me with eyes full of disappointment. What, are you feeling wronged by marrying me? I blinked, the corners of my lips lifting. I refuse to be a concubine, I will only be a wife. His other hand gripped my chin as he kissed me, until the taste of iron filled my mouth. It wasn't my blood, it was his. I had bitten him. He released my lips, wiping the trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth with his thumb, and laughed. You really are a cunning little fox. He then released my already reddened wrist, pulled me into his embrace, and said in an exceptionally gentle voice, I promise you, Xiaoshuan loves to eat jasmine cakes. And the jasmine used in them is always picked by me personally. Early summer has arrived, and the imperial garden is filled with the fragrance of jasmine. I suppose that after the crown princess enters the Eastern Palace, I will no longer be qualified to make jasmine cakes for him. Summer is always so unpredictable. Before I could even gather half of the flowers, it began to rain. The rain doesn't seem like it will stop anytime soon, so I hurried to the pavilion. Protecting the jasmine in my basket, my clothes were already soaked through, my hair plastered in strands against my face. I took off my outer robe and wrung out the rainwater, but then I heard footsteps and the voice of the chief eunuch Wang Zhong. If I were seen, I would surely be charged with disturbing the emperor. I quickly put my outer robe back on and tried to slip away quietly. I didn't expect to still be discovered and brought before him. I lay prostrate on the ground, not daring to look at him, and quickly begged for mercy. This servant knows her crime, and has disturbed your majesty. He recognized my voice and told me to rise and speak. I timidly raised my head to look at him, fluttering my lashes damp with tears, gently biting my lower lip to ease my nervousness. My pitiful expression and slightly trembling shoulders made anyone who saw me feel heartbroken. Adding to that, my soaked clothes clung to my body, revealing my curves. The emperor's gaze wandered, and he cleared his throat insincerely. Why are you here? Isn't this old man asking a question he already knows the answer to? I slightly bowed and replied with a smile, Your Majesty, I am picking some jasmine to make flower cakes for His Highness. Seeing my smile, he was momentarily stunned, reminded of someone from the past. My mother once teased that when I smile, I have two dimples, making me look like the daughter of Empress Jiang. He signaled to Wang Zhong to hand me the cloak he was holding, but I quickly declined, yet he personally draped it over my shoulders, and as he tied the strings, he spoke words of concern. Don't catch a cold. If you fall ill, the Empress will surely be heartbroken. Men are just like that. They don't cherish what they have when it's by their side, but miss it from time to time once it's gone. I thanked the Emperor and politely declined Wang Zhong's offer to escort me back. Pulling up the hood of my cloak, I wrapped Jasmine tightly and ran back to the Eastern Palace in the rain. All the way, I kept asking myself, do I really have to do this? This will surely break Xiaoshuan's heart. But if I don't do this, how can I avenge them? My thoughts were tangled like hemp. The wind blew off the hood of my cloak, and the rain once again drenched my hair. In the end, I am bound to let him down. The crown prince, not seeing me, learned from the palace attendants that I had gone to pick jasmine flowers. He grabbed an umbrella and set out to look for me. Just as I happened to meet him at the door, I set the basket in my hand aside and threw myself into his arms. Seeing me like this, he was slightly surprised, but still stroked my head and gently asked, What's wrong, my dear? Who has upset you? I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat and shook my head vigorously in his embrace. Everyone in the Eastern Palace knows I am the Crown Prince's most cherished one. Who would dare bully me? I just missed you. He had only been out of the palace for half a day, and I had never been this clingy before. He pinched my nose and said with a smile, Little liar. I changed the subject, picked up the jasmine nearby, and said proudly, I went to pick jasmine, Your Highness. Look, I protected them well and didn't let the rain ruin them. He took the basket, held my hand, and led me into the palace. It wasn't until we returned to the inner hall that I realized I was wearing an extra cloak. He asked, Whose cloak is this? I had no intention of hiding it from him and replied calmly, It belongs to His Majesty. The cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. As I reached to pick it up, he grabbed my wrist. What exactly are you trying to do, my love? I looked up at him with reddened eyes. Unable to utter a single word, he knelt on the ground, holding me tightly in his arms as if trying to merge me into his very being. His voice trembled slightly. I know you want revenge. Leave these matters to me. All right, but he is the crown prince, the future emperor. I don't want him to bear the blame and be condemned by the world. and this role of the villain, I must take it upon myself. My hands, stiff and numb, climbed onto his back as I softly replied with a single word, "Okay." The next evening, I washed the cloak, perfumed it with the scent of crabapple blossoms, and personally delivered it to Jingda Hall. The crabapple flower is the Empress's favorite. As soon as I reached the entrance, Chief Eunuch Wang Zhong immediately stepped forward. "Miss Mu, His Majesty has been waiting for you for quite some time." I gave him a slight bow, forced a smile, and walked into Jingda Hall. The Emperor was facing the bookshelf, looking at the essential techniques for the welfare of the people *. Could he even understand it? "Your Majesty, may you be at peace." He then turned around and instructed the palace maid to take his cloak. I was about to take my leave after paying respects, but he stopped me. He took out a crabapple hairpin and placed it in my hair. This was made for the Empress, but it was not yet completed when she passed. "Rather than letting it gather dust, I shall give it to you." In a way, it could be considered an item of the Empress. Lifting my skirt, I knelt down, carefully removed the hairpin, and held it above my head. "I am indebted to Your Majesty's grace and the Empress's care for allowing me to live until today. This hairpin carries Your Majesty's affection for the Empress, and I dare not accept it. But once something is given, how can it be taken back?" With hands clasped behind his back, he commanded, "I command you to accept it. Just do as you are told and say no more." I kowtowed to express my gratitude, and he bent down to help me up, but took the opportunity to try and touch my hand. Startled, I quickly stepped back, my face slightly flushed. He seemed to really enjoy shy, innocent women, his eyes sparkling with delight, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I knew he was already hooked, but how could he truly cherish something that was too easily obtained? Since returning to the Eastern Palace after delivering the cloak, the Emperor has been visiting frequently. Xiao Shuren knew his intentions and told me not to appear in front of him, and I complied. But in this world, there is no cat that doesn't steal a taste of fish. There are no jasmine flowers in the Eastern Palace. If we planted some jasmine in the open space, we wouldn't have to go to the Imperial Garden to pick them in the summer. I got some plants from the gardener and was planting them myself. Suddenly, the Emperor's voice came from behind. "You're planting jasmine specifically for him. It seems you do care about the Crown Prince. Then why won't you agree to become his Liangdi?" I hurried over, knelt down, and suppressed the curve of my lips. I am only grateful to the Crown Prince and have no romantic feelings for him. Moreover, I am of lowly status and know I am unworthy of him. The tension in his brow eased slightly as he bent down to help me up. I lowered my head, not daring to look at him, and stepped back again. Saying I had other matters to attend to, he asked in confusion, "Are you avoiding me?" I stopped walking and shook my head, but he walked up to me with his hands behind his back and asked again, "Then why did you return all the gifts I sent you?" He sends fresh novelties every few days. But I return them before Eunuch Wang Zhong can even deliver them to the Eastern Palace. If the Crown Prince were to find out, it would be disastrous. I lifted my head, looked directly into his eyes, and said with a serious expression, "I know I am fortunate to bear some resemblance to Her Majesty the Empress, which is why Your Majesty favors me, but I do not like such favor." Hearing this, he raised an eyebrow slightly and no longer concealed his smile. "So that's why you've been avoiding me." I averted my gaze, gently bit my lower lip, and twisted my sleeves with both hands. "I don't know why, but every time I see Your Majesty, my heart feels all tangled up." He strode forward, boldly wrapped his arm around my waist, and whispered in my ear, "My darling, you are flustered because you have feelings for me. How narcissistic." I stopped struggling, leaned my head against his chest, and pouted, "I am not the Empress's substitute, I am Mu Qingqing." He tightened his arms with satisfaction and said sincerely, "You are different from the Empress. Qing'er suits my heart better." My expression turned cold as I smiled mockingly. The feeling of secrecy was indeed different. Since then, he would often meet me in secret, as if he had fallen in love with the feeling. But in the end, it was a relationship without a name, something that could not see the light of day. A sudden internal conflict broke out in the north, seemingly fierce and aggressive, claiming the lives of many common people. The Crown Prince volunteered to go and quell the rebellion, and the Emperor approved, He was to set off the next day, the night before he left. I made him many jasmine cakes and urged him to take good care of himself. He said with a smile, "I'll be back in about a month, my dear. Don't worry." I threw myself into his arms, held his waist tightly, and my nose tingled with emotion. "You must be safe." He wiped the tears from the corner of my eye, looked at me gently, and then gave a faint smile. "All right." On the day he set off, I stood on the city wall for a long time. The wind was so strong that day, I never expected my body to be so weak. I fell ill as soon as I returned. After Xiao Shuren left, the emperor seemed to no longer bother hiding it. Upon learning that I was ill, he openly brought the imperial physician into the Eastern Palace. Rumors began to spread throughout the palace, claiming that the reason I rejected the crown prince was because I wanted to become his mother. Relying on my slight resemblance to Empress Jiang, I dared to entertain such wild fantasies. I don't care how harsh their words are. I only hope the commotion grows bigger and bigger. After taking medicine for many days without any improvement, he came to see me again after court and personally fed me the medicine. "Your Majesty, please don't come to see this servant anymore in the future." Cough cough. My face was deathly pale, and I looked at him with tear-filled eyes. He patted my back to soothe me, his tone tinged with self-reproach. "It was my fault for letting you suffer from gossip and rumors. Don't worry. I have already issued an edict appointing you as noble consort. You will be the most honored woman in the inner palace. Let's see who would dare speak ill of my Chinga." I never expected him to directly appoint me as noble consort. Since ancient times, no palace maid had ever been directly elevated to such a high rank. Indeed, when a man loves you, he would gladly give you his very heart. I looked at him in disbelief, shaking my head repeatedly. "What virtue or ability do I, a humble servant, possess?" He set down the medicine bowl, gently held me close in his arms, and whispered softly, "My dear, you deserve the finest things in this world. Do not call yourself a servant anymore." Soon after, the decree to appoint me as a consort was issued, and I moved to Jiaohua Palace, second only to the Empress's Shaohua Palace. Below the platform, Consort Li's face was tense, her eyes sharp as blades, fixed intently on me. She was already advanced in years, her beauty long faded, and life had been difficult for her in recent years. She had placed all her hopes on her son. Unfortunately, the third prince was a disappointment, knowing only how to indulge in food, drink, and pleasure. After the crown prince returned, he gradually stripped the third prince's faction of their power, making them no longer a threat. But the emperor, now past his 50s, had ruined his health in his earlier years and now relies solely on medication. In that case, I must add something extra for you, to make His Majesty feel even more ecstatic. While I was bathing in the hall, Chun Liu came in to report that the emperor had taken twice his usual dose of aphrodisiac. Smiling, I dabbed on the ylang ylang perfume. "The fragrance is truly enchanting. My figure is full and voluptuous. I don't need those sheer, flimsy garments to captivate him." Barefoot, I slowly approach him, my fingers gliding over the emperor's neck, tracing the line of his Adam's apple downward. Just as he reaches to grasp my hand, I pull it back, lift the hem of my skirt, and dart behind the crimson pillar. The sound of bells on my ankles and my clear, crisp laughter echo through Jiaohua Palace. This game of playing hard to get works perfectly on him. He calls out "beloved consort," and rushes toward me. Suddenly, my feet left the ground as he lifted me and placed me on the bed, leaning over me, the scent of ylang ylang reaching its peak. His eyes were already dazed as he grabbed my restless hands. Suddenly, his expression twisted in pain, and he collapsed on top of me, with trembling hands. I reached to check his breathing. Feeling no breath, I pushed him away in disgust. At that moment, the palace doors burst open. It was the crown prince who had returned. He stood with his back to the light, his sword dripping with blood, his voice barely containing his fury. "Mu Qingqing." The guards behind him surrounded me, and I truly felt a bit panicked. I scrambled over on my hands and knees, clinging to his leg, begging for mercy. "Your Highness, this is a misunderstanding. I haven't even finished taking off my clothes. How could I possibly be seducing anyone?" He leaned down, pinched my chin, and with a scornful smile, His gaze drifted toward my slightly loosened inner garment. "You've always been full of lies. Do you really think I would believe you now, Lady Mu Qingqing, for indulging His Majesty in the private use of secret medicine, leading to his death? Guards, take her away. I will personally oversee the trial." He forcefully turned my face away, stood up with his hands behind his back, and the guards behind him immediately stepped forward to drag me out. I was imprisoned, and along with me were members of the Third Prince's faction, including Li Nanchu. It turned out there was no rebellion in the north at all. It was all a ruse to lure the Third Prince into making a move, and on the day of the imperial consort's ceremony, the crowd was chaotic and disorderly, making it the perfect opportunity. Unexpectedly, the Crown Prince returned under the pretense of protecting the Emperor. The next morning, I was escorted to the interrogation room. He was already seated in the Grand Master's chair, wearing a black dragon robe with subtle patterns. His voice cold. I never knew Qingqing had such nerve. I knelt directly on the floor, tilting my head to look at him. "Hasn't your Highness always known that I am someone who never forgets a grievance?" He stood up and walked toward me, pinching my face as he said, "Do you really not trust me this much?" How could I not trust him? The scheme he set up to go suppress the rebellion was all for the sake of revenge, and to marry me. Facing his questioning, I forced myself to remain calm. Staring straight at him, my tone turning firm, "Your Highness is right. The late Emperor was your father. I never believed that your Highness would avenge the Empress, or your father." He let go of my hand in despair, tilting his head back to keep the tears from falling. Xu Jiao presented a cup of poisoned wine, and I knew it was meant for me. "I caused the late Emperor's death by indulging his desires. This is known throughout the palace. He must give an explanation to the world. Executing me is the best choice, but I still have one wish: to crawl to his feet, clutch the hem of his robe, and plead, 'Your Majesty, I beg you to clear my father's name.'" He didn't want to look at me and turned his head away. I knew he would agree, and without the slightest hesitation, he drank that cup of poisoned wine. This wine was truly awful, making my heart ache, and I lost consciousness instantly. Am I not dead? Where is this place? It looks so much like Jingda Palace. She put on her shoes and ran out of the bedchamber. Chun Liu set down the meal she was holding and chased after her. She draped a cloak over me, saying, "Be careful not to catch a cold." I looked at her in confusion. "Your Majesty, the Empress," she said with a smile. "His Majesty has already decreed to confer you the title of Empress. You were gravely ill, so the grand ceremony has not yet taken place. Wasn't I sentenced to death? How did I become the Empress instead?" I was just about to go find him and ask for an explanation when I bumped right into him at the corner. Xiao Shuren scooped me up by the waist and carried me back to the inner chamber. He set me down on the lounge chair, already knowing what I wanted to ask. "I told you I would marry you. You now have a new identity, Zhong Wanging, niece of Grand Tutor Zhong. He has never broken his promise to me and has arranged everything for me. My dear, rest assured. I have already sent someone to investigate General Mu's case, and his innocence will soon be restored." I stared at him in a daze. "Your Majesty, do you not hate me? After all, it was I who caused the death of the late Emperor." He held my hand and said with a smile, "I don't hate you. The late Emperor married Empress Jiang to consolidate his throne, but as the voices supporting the Crown Prince grew louder, he began to feel threatened. While in Viling, assassins were sent every now and then, with the intention of supporting the weak Third Prince. Back then, my father's case was successfully overturned, and his remains were found at the border. Finally, his soul returned to his homeland, and he was buried together with my mother. Empress, father, mother, Qingqing has avenged you. May you rest in peace." The imperial wedding of the Emperor and Empress was an exceptionally grand affair. Holding my hand, he led me step by step to the highest position, where we received the homage of all the court officials. After finally completing the elaborate ceremonies, I sat on the bridal bed, waiting for him to lift my veil. I could feel the trembling of his hands. I hooked my arm around his neck and pulled him down, so he fell on top of me. I boldly planted a kiss on his cheek, and he still blushed. But on the wedding night, there's no need for so much shyness. In the bridal chamber, the candlelight flickered through the bed curtains, casting a seductive glow. he exclaimed. "You're a first-timer." It was already painful, but hearing those words, I couldn't hold back any longer, my nails scratching his back. "Xiao Shuren, you bastard." He actually thought I had lost my purity, but the late emperor was impotent. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.